Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. This is actually part 2 of our discussion on coloratura song cycles in the 20th century. So if you haven't seen part 1, I suggest you might want to check that out first, and I'll put a link in the description box. And for those who have, remember to stay tuned until the end for a surprise announcement by Morgan and me.
So now we're going to talk about another Webern song after we've kind of deconstructed his vocal writing, which is actually much more manageable. I'd say in some ways you could even debate, like with the Rachmaninov, whether this is really a coloratura song. But again, like the Rachmaninov, it does seem to suit a very bright voice like the singer we're going to listen to here. This is Webern's Opus 25. This is the third song. So let's just take a quick listen and then we'll talk a little more.
Wahrlich, der Honig aus ihr Hängt schimmert an euch. Lasset ihn tropfen ins Herz, in die goldene Wabe. Fällt sie an bis zum Rand.
So just briefly about the singer here, I think that some of you may find it interesting to know that this is, if you've seen classic movie musicals like The King and I, West Side Story, My Fair Lady, this is actually the voice singing the lead female role songs, right? All of those were dubbed. Those are very famous actresses, obviously, but who are not known for their singing voices. And so Marni Nixon is actually the singer in all of those movie musicals. At the same time, she had an active concert career in the United States. And what's really interesting is that she was actually very active in singing contemporary music of her time. So that's these Webern pieces. I'm going to link below because there's a wonderful performance on YouTube of her singing the Boulez improvisations on Mallarmé. So I think for anyone who's interested in that, I definitely recommend her performance of that. But anyway, let's talk about this piece, which seems much more manageable overall compared to the one we just heard. It seems like Webern had some second thoughts or more thoughts, about how to write for the kind of a high female voice. What's your take on this one? This one, I think, because we have kind of a calmed down texture overall, maybe we could focus a little bit on this question of pitching, because it becomes something that you pay attention to more in this piece. I found myself, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose too, when we're saying manageable, it's not that we're saying, oh, this high note or this low note is not singable, because obviously these singers can reach these notes in any context. It's actually the setup for them all that seems more or less manageable. So in this case, yeah, I would say that they feel more manageable just due to the fact that it's stretched out. It's a little bit more spaced out for the singer and a little less jarring when you look at it on the page too. Yes, there's still leaps. Yes, they're big and what have you, but it feels a little less tense. But
Right.
it has all of those things that we talked about before, that it showcases the bottom and showcases the top. But like you just said, it is a little bit more sparse in the kind of overall sonic world. There's not all these other timbres to kind of pull off of. It's not that you're blending with such and such instrument. So, and there's also no doubling. So the singer is sort of left to their own devices here to kind of grab onto something that helps them hook into a sense of tuning, a sense of pitch, something that's going to tie it all together in terms of this collaborative duo.
Right. And I'd like to say that, sort of contrary to some of the things that I hear sometimes, there's no real difference. And I think we talked about this last time, certainly. So I know Morgan at least agrees with me on this, and I feel comfortable saying this in front of her, which is that there's no difference of approach in singing this kind of music to singing, Rossini or anything like that. You learn it the same way. And I talked about this in our previous video also in terms of the piano. Like this is the Webern, this second example, what is, I think, another really interesting facet of it is the extent to which the vocal writing and the piano writing are perfectly matched. They're both equally sparse for their relative instruments, right? It's very sparse piano writing also. So that, some of the challenges are different, but basically I think you approach it the same way. I think it's probably safer in some ways, not to think about it as like, oh, this is like only people who are used to doing this should do it. I think that the approach for performers, whether vocalists or pianists, is basically the same. Again, it's a kind of a challenge it's a kind of a mental challenge. It looks frightening and it may sound frightening, depending, hopefully not so. But once you acclimatize yourself to it, it's really the same kind of work and practice and everything like that. I do think that this piece, though, for the singer poses problems of, not problems, but it makes the singer really focus on pitching. And there are difficult intervals, even within this more pared down kind of texture. The intervals are difficult, they're difficult to pitch, and they do require, I would say, you know, that, right, they require practicing those and really getting that in the voice, as we talked about last time.
Absolutely. So for the next example, we're listening to a particular song from the cycle Chanson de Ronsard from Milhaud. And this set, actually, in my eyes, is one of the go-tos for both coloratura sopranos and sopranos who like to sing high. A lot of my friends have done these. I've taken a look at them too. So the next two actually are ones I would say are the most popular in this niche material in the repertoire. So when we talk about this piece, and particularly the excerpt we just listened to, it's almost like patter. It's a lot of text, a lot of notes, but it's not often something you see. We have a lot of this kind of articulation, a staccati sort of percussive sound, and we've heard this in other examples. But in this case, it also is a changing of text, not just vowel. And, you know, there's these very famous pieces that are just ah ha 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 and like ahs and e's and ohs. But in this case, the text is changing too. And this is also very reminiscent of a lot of Poulenc's art song, where you have a lot of text that's very fast, and it does give a particular sense and feeling to it. And it is almost like patter in a way, but it's very unique in a set like this that's just focusing on these high notes as well. So it's not just virtuosity in pitch in this case, but also text plus range plus speed. And you know, it's kind of sets it up, the beginning of this song, to be, oh, this is something we expect of some, you know, this nice high situation, and then it just kind of takes over. It's very charming, but it is tricky, and it's hard to not get stuck in a tension trap in a way when you have all these consonants and words passing through.
That is interesting, because it does start with that wordless cadenza, which, you know, seems very straightforward, and then it gets fast when the words come in. So this is actually a perfect example of using the kind of the virtuosity and the kind of some of the specificities of that high voice for purely sort of textual purposes. It's very interesting in that sense. Yeah, a good example, I would say.
Yeah, and it kind of subverts the expectation a little bit too, when you're expecting, oh, it's just going to be on ah.
It does, because the high staccati, these are kind of a coloratura trademark, but usually, you know, on ah, you know, not with words. So speaking of coloratura trademarks, we're down to our last song, and we've saved what some might consider the best for last. It certainly is probably the best known across the board of all the songs of all the pieces that we're addressing. And this is the song Amor from Richard Strauss's cycle of Brentano Lieder. And we're going to hear in this recording some of the kind of the very kind of coloratura effects that it's known for, but also a singer, German coloratura of the interwar period, who sang Strauss roles and probably was known to Strauss, so it kind of makes it interesting. So let's go ahead and hear Spoiler alert, Morgan has sung this piece. So I think that she's really the one well placed to talk with us about this. But maybe if I can just direct a little bit our discussion to talk about what we just heard, which is some of these we're really getting into this kind of very technical area of the coloratura voice, almost like these kind of vocal exercises, right? With the trills on high notes, the runs, kind of ceaseless runs. For some of you, who are familiar, the material maybe sounds very reminiscent of Zerbinetta's aria in Strauss's Ariadne auf Naxos, which is, by the way, a role that this singer Erna Berger sang in those days. I really want to hear what Morgan's sort of impressions are of this particular piece,
So I sang this whole cycle, and it is such an interesting set for me because it is sort of all-encompassing of the voice. All of the things that we've said so far are found in this cycle. There are high leaps, there are low leaps, there are songs that sit a little lower and then jump high. There are ones like this that's go high and stay high. I will poke a little bit of fun at myself that it was this piece that prompted me to stop saying I was a coloratura soprano. I now recognize myself as a soprano with some high notes versus someone that would find this, oh, I'm going to sing this every single day comfortably. This piece is hard. And I know people who categorize themselves as a coloratura soprano who still find it hard. Mm-hmm. It is just where it sits, and exactly like you said, the technical facility needed to precisely and cleanly produce some of these things. So the trills and anything that will kind of make that larynx want to rise up and add some tension to your performance. You need to be very grounded when you sing this piece. And if things start to kind of get away from you, you're going to get a sound that you don't like. It's not comfortable. And of course, for many, actually, when you do this cycle, a lot of people end with this one. A lot of people don't do that sixth piece. And it actually doesn't quite suit the same type of voice, which is why I find these cycles so interesting. But a lot of people end with this, and not always the wisest if this is something that takes you a while to warm up to. And if you sing all these pieces and then get to this and you think, oh man. A lot of people also sing this excerpted from the cycle. They sing it on a one-off, they throw it into other things. It kind of is a go-to when it comes to coloratura art song, and it's also one of the most popular and most well-known, most sung, but it really does showcase what coloraturas are known for, both in range, but in timbre, of course, but also just the virtuosity of a voice that sits in that zone. So again, like we said at the beginning, when we talk about coloratura, it's not just range and color, it's also all of the things in between. So these trills, the fast passages, it covers everything. And that's kind of why it's become a staple in coloratura art song.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that that's actually a great kind of note to kind of wrap up our overview of these few songs. So now, for those of you who have stuck around, we have, as we promised, a little surprise, which is that we're basically just announcing here on YouTube for the first time that that Morgan and I are actually planning now a series of videos. We're actually planning a new piece together that I'm writing for her, and we're planning to make some more videos a little bit like this, but we'll also be filming our rehearsal process as well as the recording, and we'll put that up and we'll see exactly, we don't know the details of how it's going to work out, but we do want to bring in some of the kind of the realities of working together, collaborating musically, which is what musicians do, right? In a pandemic situation. So we will be bringing that aspect in also, which hopefully will be of use to some of you who are, I'm sure, struggling with that, as we all are. But it will not be a remote performance. We will be socially distanced. We will be safe.
It will all work out.
It will all, yes. So that's basically it. And by the way, if there are any questions or suggestions about things that you'd like to hear, in our upcoming videos, please let us know. And again, please remember to let us know if you think we left out a song or cycle that fits into this category as we've tried to draw it. So with that, I think that we basically covered it. So I will say thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. And Morgan, thank you very much again for being with us today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.